Good evening. I'm Pedro Hazel Jr., pinch hitting for Nisa Petrilli.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
I'm Steve Ferguson.
And I'm Sean Roman.
And this is On the Sports Lines for July 24th, 2014. The unofficial start of the 2014 NFL season gets underway this week as all 32 teams start reporting to training camp. That means we're all about football tonight. We'll look at some old faces expected to make an impact in new places and then bring in a pair of special guests to help us take a look at the Jets and Giants as they start camp. All that and more. As always, we want to hear from you. So email us at fanspeak@onthesportslines.com. Send your tweets to @onthesportslines and your posts to facebook.com/onthesportslines. We may just read them on the show.
We will, Sean.
NFL teams are reporting to training camp this week, and as always, there are plenty of old faces and new places that will be expected to make an major impact for their new teams. Our panel will be looking at 3 of those free agent pickups. Jay, you're up first. Who will you be looking at?
I'm going to be looking at DeMarcus Ware, who will now be plying his trade as a defensive end for the Denver Broncos, previously a member of the Dallas Cowboys. Key for Ware is going to be his health. Last season, elbow injury plus nagging ones from 2012 was not really as big a playmaker as the Cowboys were hoping. He claims that this offseason regimen has him back to full strength. I'm feeling better than I have in years, he's telling everybody. Now, granted, he only missed 3 games last year, but he saw his sack total dip to 6 after averaging 15.5 per season prior to that. Broncos led the NFL in sacks in 2012. Von Miller and Elvis Dumervil running wild.
Yep.
Last year without Dumervil and with Miller only registering 5 sacks because he was barely on the field because of 6-game suspension and ACL. Pass rush was average at best. Now, granted, Denver's taking a bit of a risk given Ware. $20 million as a 31-year-old. But I'll tell you what, if he's healthy and if Miller is healthy, they give Denver one of the best pass rushes in the NFL, and he'll be worth keeping an eye on.
Definitely. Well, I'm going with Deshaun Jackson, now of the Washington Redskins. And I will tell you, this guy, if he's healthy, and really the key for him is keeping his head on straight, more so than being healthy, because that's been his issue.
Yes,
but he is a tremendous speed wide receiver. And finally, Santana Moss, who has been playing in the league for 12 years, going on 13, will have somebody who can run with him, and also they won't be double teaming him anymore. And finally, they will have somebody to throw to.
Steve, are you optimistic about the Redskins?
I think they have a better chance this year now, especially if the offensive line does a good job.
You know, I don't get it. It's July. I'm thinking about going to the beach.
I
not
know.
football. This is
Focus, Sean,
absolutely
focus.
I can barely
Which free
do
agent
this.
you looking at?
Well, I'm looking at the Detroit Lions and their big pickup, Golden Tate. Since their bizarro perfect season a few years ago when they had
0-16.
0-16, legendary. They've been on an upswing. They've got the #1 quarterback from Georgia. They've made some great picks on the offensive line. They're sticking with Matthew Stafford, had a lot of confidence in him. They got Calvin Johnson, best receiver in the league. And getting Golden Tate is really going to take a lot of the double teaming and pressure off Calvin Johnson. It's really going to allow him to flourish. And Tate's also coming off a championship team. He's going to show a lot of leadership to a team that genuinely needs it. And they're behind a very solid offensive line. And most importantly, last year, most drop passes in the entire National Football League was the Detroit Lions. And now they have a very speedy, confident, and sure-handed receiver in Golden Tate.
Yep, should be a boon.
Exactly.
Well, both the Jets and Giants report to training camp this week, and as usual, there will be plenty of storylines to follow. To get a handle of some of them, we are happy to welcome back to the show Joe Tufaro, co-host of the Blue and Green Review, and Dennis Agapito, host of Let's Talk Jets with Dennis and Tyson. We're starting with the Jets, so Dennis is up first. Hello, Dennis. Good to talk with you.
Oh, well, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
The guys have some questions for you, Dennis. Steve, lead off.
Yes, Dennis, my question, and being a huge Jet fan, this is a great question, I think, for all of us. Which free agent makes a bigger impact for the Jets? Do you think it would be Eric Decker or Chris Johnson?
Well, not only do I think he'll make a bigger impact, he had better make a bigger impact, and that would be Eric Decker.
Yes.
Look, Eric Decker got the 5-year deal. He's 27. He's coming into his prime, and I know that the knock on Eric Decker is that he's a product of Peyton Manning. But you know what? He did have 87 receptions last year. The year before that, 85. He had to catch the ball. You know, he had to run with it. He scored 24 touchdowns over the last 2 years. So he has to take some pressure off of Geno Smith, be that go-to guy. Also, maybe draw some coverage, get some of these guys underneath open. Jalen Saunders, the 4th-round pick. Jeremy Curley could have a big year. Chris Johnson is going on 29 years old, got a lot of wear and tear in his body. He only had a 3.9 average last year per carry. So I look at Chris Johnson as more of a spellback, catching the ball out of the backfield. Chris Ivory should be the workhorse. Tends to get hurt a little bit, so Johnson's a little bit of insurance. But it'd best be Eric Decker, really, who makes the biggest impact as a free agent pickup for the Jets. Otherwise, I think the offseason was a little bit of a failure.
Wow.
Fair enough. Dennis, it's Jay. How are you, my friend?
Oh, very good, Jay.
So, Dennis, as we've worked together in the past, my focus is, as usual, is on the quarterback. So let me throw out Geno Smith and Michael Vick here. Geno's coming off an awful rookie season. Michael Vick is brought in, has some history with Morenweg back in Philly. Is there going to be a quarterback competition, or is it Geno's job to lose?
There is no competition at all. And it's not even Geno's job to lose. It's Geno Smith's job. Look, you want to talk about...
Everybody has a job to lose in the NFL.
Look, you want to talk about atrocious? I mean, Michael Vick was brought in to do one thing, to be a backup. Michael Vick is a backup in this league, folks. He can't finish the season. He can't stay healthy. He's a turnover machine. Now, look, Geno Smith has one thing that Michael Vick does not have: upside, potential. And if you look at Michael Vick's numbers from last year, I mean, he had all these weapons: Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy, Brent Selleck, one of the best offensive lines in the league. And let me ask you this. When he went out due to injury and Nick Foles went in, what kind of job did Nick Foles do?
A lot better than Michael Vick did.
Yeah, phenomenal.
A lot better than Michael Vick. Geno Smith is the future, and nobody's going to hand him the keys to the car and just say, look, it's yours, it's your job, period, because they did that with Mark Sanchez.
Yep.
It took a lot of heat for it. So you know what? Michael Vick is there to mentor Geno Smith, help him with the offense, and help him progress. And you said he had a terrible year last year. Look, he had his ups and downs.
Yes, he did.
He was Jekyll and Hyde Geno. Just for example, quickly, after the bye when they were 5-4 in the playoff race, he had a 10 quarterback rating, a 22 quarterback rating, and an 8 quarterback rating.
Yes,
but
sir.
he followed that up, finishing up the season with an 88 quarterback rating, a 69 quarterback rating against a good Carolina Panthers defense, a 92 quarterback rating, and an 84 quarterback rating. The question with Geno Smith is, which Geno Smith are we going to see? The more consistent, the more confident Geno Smith? You know what? If Michael Vick starts week 1, Rex Ryan, pack your bags, John Idzik, start scouting quarterbacks, because you're starting over.
You and I are in agreement on that, my friend. Sean?
You just mentioned Rex Ryan. Very briefly, how much rope is he going to be given this season?
What do you mean by how much rope is he going to be given this season? You mean to retain his job going into 2015?
Yes.
I mean, some people say there's a mandate for him to make the playoffs, but I think
that's what I believe.
I don't think it necessarily means he has to make the playoffs. If it was some kind of thing where they lost in a tiebreaker, had a 9-7 record, had a 10-6 record, and lost in the tiebreaker, he could hold on to his job. If Geno Smith showed progress, they have a fairly tough schedule. Let's say they lost a few games just by the skin of their teeth. He could hang on. But, I think he has to be better than 8-8. And, look, he makes the playoffs, he definitely stays. There is that middle ground. It's a lot slimmer than it was last year. 7-9 might have kept his job last year. But this year, 7-9 is not going to keep Rex's job. I think it's got to be 9-7 or better.
One more question. Besides
Sure.
Nick Folk, what other Jets are under the microscope this year?
Besides Nick Folk, who's under the microscope. Well, I'll give you 3 offensive players and 3 defensive players. First, I'm going to give you the rookie tight end, Jason Morrow, because Jeff Cumberland's the veteran. He's going to handle the yeoman's part of the work, but Jason Morrow can be moved all over the field. He was at Texas Tech. I think they're expecting pretty decent production out of him. He was swimming a little bit in mini camp, having a difficult time picking up the playbook. I think they're going to use him in a variety of ways, and he really has to come through. Not necessarily huge numbers, just with numbers that they're expecting. And the other two players are Brian Winters and Ode Abouche. And you might be surprised to hear this. You know, Brian Winters started at left guard last year, had his struggles, but came on towards the end. Ode Abouche was on the team as a guard tackle, didn't play, was kind of red-shirted. Willie Colon has a history of injuries, injured right now.
Yes,
so I
he
think
does.
the guard play for the Jets has to definitely improve. And those two guys will play a big part on that offensive line if they're going to take a step forward. On the defense, it's in the secondary, and here are the three guys that I'm looking at. D. Milner, first of all, he's got to live up. He's got to live up to that number 9 overall pick, and also, I mean, he was Defensive Rookie of the Month in December. Played really well against a guy like Josh Gordon at the time, who was one of the hottest receivers in the league. Covered him one-on-one. The other guy is Dimitri Patterson. Now, look, he's a veteran guy, but he tends to get injured. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to be able to be out there on the field, you know, not in the training room. And the other guy is a real wild card here, and it was a controversial pick. Rookie Dexter McDougal. So the guy really has some athletic ability. In fact, today he had a nice pick during training camp. You know, the Jets were minus 14 in turnover differential last year.
Yep.
They need to get more fumble recoveries. They need to get more interceptions, and they need to cut down on the offensive side. A guy like Dexter McDougal is a playmaker type guy with a lot of speed, who's kind of could be a ball hawk. You know, keep your eye open for him as a sleeper guy progressing down the year who could really make an impact with his team.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks so much for joining us, Dennis, tonight.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Anytime. You take
Thanks
care.
for joining
fellas.
us tonight, Dennis. We look forward to talking to you again during the season.
Okay, Pedro. Take care. Good night, fellas.
Thanks,
care.
Dennis.
Take care, Dennis. Thank you. Time now to turn to the Giants. So, Joe, you're up. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
The guys have some questions for you, too, Joe. Jay, lead off.
Yes, sir. How are you, my friend?
Good, Jay. How you doing, brother?
Not so good. Not so bad. So, as
The truth came out.
truth
for a
came out, I'm a
Yes,
little Joe, as you know, I'm a little concerned about my Steelers, as always. So, talking Giants, you know, we've worked together. My focus is on quarterback. So, how much of a microscope do you think Eli's going to be in coming into this camp, coming off the rough season, having to learn a new offense? How much of a microscope?
Yeah, not so much on Eli, I think. I think it's on the offense as a whole and on Ben McAdoo, to be honest.
Fair.
I think once we realized that Eli was completely healthy, and, you know, when they released Josh Freeman, you knew that he was going to be healthy enough to take all the first-team snaps, and he's going to be playing in the first quarter of all the preseason games. And so we knew that he was physically healthy once that happened. You know, so we don't have a problem. We don't have a controversy like you just spoke to Dennis about. You know,
No.
he's going to be the guy. So what we're going to look at, and I think what the biggest microscope is on Ben McAdoo's new offense, the speed with which they want to play with, you know, the communication with all the new wording and all the new verbiage is solid, and just getting together as a team and then getting an offensive line in front of them that can play together. You know, with Chris Snee, the great Chris Snee, retiring this week,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know, he's a Hall of Famer, you suddenly have nobody left from just 2 years ago when they won the Super Bowl.
Right.
You know, it's you know, they won in 2011. And it's 2014, you have nobody left that was in front of you as an offensive line. So I think that's where the microscope is on the offense as a whole.
I agree.
Not so much on Eli, just personally.
All right. Sean?
Joe, I got a question about the running backs. Is David Wilson coming into camp as the number one running back? And your opinion, who's leaving camp as the number one running back?
Yeah, I don't think anybody gets that nod from Coach Coughlin. You know, when you have a year like you did last year, ain't nobody coming in with any jobs except for Eli. So,
Yeah, I agree with that.
and also because, again, of his health, you know, I think what they did is funny. Dennis and I had a conversation yesterday about this. I think that they did what they had to do to protect themselves in the running back position, and now you get the information that Wilson's 100% healthy. That just adds to the depth and gives them more flexibility what they're going to do. So I think, you know, Jennings is probably going to be considered co-number one with Wilson. But you got this Andre Williams who came out of Boston College,
Right,
yeah.
top rusher in the NCAA last year. He was kind of making a name for himself as the goal line back, as the inside the five back, as short yardage back. You know, you still got Peyton Hillis. You still got Michael Cox. So I think, as usual, they're going to stick them all out there and make it work. But also, as usual, it's going to be a committee. There is no such thing on this team anymore. Since they haven't ever had a number one running back since Tiki. You know, it's always been two or three guys.
Correct.
It's been Jacobs and Brown. It's been, Bradshaw and Jacobs. And so it's always going to be 2-3 guys on this team. And 'cause that's just the way that they go. And again, I think they have 5 or 6 guys competing for those probably 5 spots. But you're going to have, one of the guys will be a fullback. You still got John Connor and Henry Yanofsky fighting for that job. So, again, lots of competition, and we'll see who comes out.
Steve?
Yeah. My question is, what other player besides Eli and Wilson will be under the microscope in camp?
Yeah, well, I could give you Dennis's answer, give you 11 guys on offense. 11 guys on defense.
I'm sure you could.
But I'll try to keep it brief for you guys.
Okay.
I think two spots. I think, first of all, somebody you heard from today for the first time since earlier in the summer is Jason Pierre-Paul.
Yeah.
And, is he not going to be the key to this defensive line? If he gets back to, as he said today, 110% and feeling good and playing good, it makes Kiwi look better. It makes Marcus Kuhn looks better. It makes, the guys inside. It makes DeMontre Moore be able to come in for a speed package. It makes the linebackers look better. So if JPP gets back to his old self from a couple of years back, that is going to be a huge, huge boon for this team. And then I think you got to look at Larry Donnell as a tight end. I think he's going to wind up winning this competition. I thought he played well last year, but because Brandon Myers was there and was getting the big contract, they kind of made plays for him, and he was the first option. Larry Donnell was open a lot of times if you go back and watch some film from last year, and did not get the ball thrown to him.
Okay.
He's looked good already in practice, and he seems to be very good. He said, he's got a tight end body. So if he can figure out the blocking, he can certainly get down the seam and catch some balls. And so I think that's the two sides. I think you got JPP, and I think Larry Donnell's going to be somebody who can make this offense work to its optimum.
All right.
Okay.
Stuff people to keep an eye on.
Yes. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Joe. We look forward to talking to you again during the season.
Anytime, guys. You know that.
All right, Joe. We'll talk soon, my friend.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you
Take care,
again,
guys.
Joe. That's Joe Tufaro from the Blue and Green Review and Dennis Agapito from Let's Talk Jets with Dennis and Tyson. Check them out during football season. Who knows, you might even catch our own Jay Kaplan as well.
You might. I enjoy working with those guys, Pedro. I really do. They're a lot of fun to work with.
Hey, this is crazy. Ray Rice gets 2 games for beating up his wife. I mean, that's amazing.
Unbelievable.
What do you feel about it, Sean?
It is kind of bizarre. Before the show, I showed the video, which had been
TMZ
on the line
video.
for months. And it was one of you guys who hadn't seen it, thought it was like a reenactment.
I did. That was me.
Because
That
she's-
was you.
if you look at the video, she is completely on the floor of an elevator in casino, and he takes her just right outside of it. He hit her that hard where he knocked her out. And to me, it's just a terrible dog and pony show by professional sports. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think this is 10 times worse than anything Donald Sterling ever did. And nobody's calling for a lifetime ban at all. They're accepting it and they're drafting him as part of their fantasy football teams because it's in their interest. It's financial interest that runs supreme and not the right thing. Like Spike Lee said, do the right thing. NFL, you did not do the right thing in any way, shape, or
No,
form.
I gotta agree with you there, Sean. I mean, Steve, we were talking about this earlier. It's like, okay, because there were no charges filed, you didn't go to court, you didn't spend any time in jail, and you're already in
No, he
counseling.
was,
You're
he
gonna
was in the
slap-
criminal justice
Yeah,
system.
but I mean,
he entered into a diversion program,
Right, so, I
and
mean,
that's
he-
acceptable.
Yeah, so because he's already in counseling, Goodell just
Exactly.
basically
I
slaps his
disagree with
wrist.
that. That should have been more
Exactly.
serious.
I
And,
mean,
and
that's
it never
ridiculous.
should have been 2 games. Are you kidding me? He should have been out for half the season for what he did.
At least.
It's ridiculous. I mean,
Here's my thing, and I got to ask this question, okay? What is it with Baltimore Ravens players and committing what amounts to felonies, whatever grade Sean will deem them,
Oh,
yeah.
and basically
Water.
getting slapped on the wrist
Probably in the
by the
water.
commissioner of the NFL?
It is absolutely
Okay?
bizarre.
Here's
But
my-
it's just us. We're just having a nice little conversation and saying it's bizarre, but we don't really care enough to have to find it that reprehensible where we'll do anything like a Ravens fan not buy tickets or threaten a boycott
good.
or not support buying his jerseys or not drafting him. Nobody does things like that, and that's what's
and
wrong with this
that-
situation.
Exactly, right there. Well, that's what's wrong with
Yeah.
society.
Absolutely.
That is definitely, I agree. Throughout the 94 years that the NFL has been around, there have been teams that have dominated in a particular year or just captured our fancy and attention for a season. If you could play for one team in a single season at any time in the history of the NFL, which one would it be? Sean, start us off.
I think I would take the opportunity to play with truly the greatest American athlete there ever was. You ever think about it? Where is the Hall of Fame?
Canton, Ohio.
Canton.
And there was actually a football team from Canton, Ohio, that the greatest athlete, Jim Thorpe,
That's right.
Yes.
was on. It was called the Canton Bulldogs. So he moved over in about 1915 to the Canton Bulldogs, and that really was the seed from which all of the NFL, what it's blossomed into today. So if I had an opportunity, I think it would be a lot of fun to play in that era with the best athlete who ever lived.
Typical Sean going with a guy on a team before the NFL was actually.
Well,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
were part of something called the Ohio League, which led to a precursor to the NFL 2 years later. And
which was not formed until 1920.
Jim Thorpe played like even about 10 years or so in the actual NFL.
Did not know that.
Wow.
Steve, who are you going with?
Well, you know what? As you guys know, I'm a huge Jet fan, but
Yes.
my other favorite team is the Washington Redskins.
I thought you were a Redskins fan more than a Jet fan.
He is.
I was and still am, but the Redskins, especially during the 80s, were great. And
Yeah.
the 87 Redskin team was superb.
That was a team.
That
was
was
a
an
team.
awesome team. And the Super Bowl with Doug Williams, Timmy Smith, who ran for over 203 yards,
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember that
and
one.
the Hogs. How good was
yeah.
that
Oh, yeah, the
offensive line?
Hogs.
They obliterated the Buffalo Bills.
That's right.
And I remember
Yes.
watching that game in my room and screaming
No,
and
Denver
yelling.
Broncos, I think they played, right?
No, that was a different year.
That was another year.
Oh.
That was another year that they were really good. But the 87 team to me was by far the best team they had.
I have
Right,
to
right.
agree with you. You guys, no surprise. You know I'm
Right.
going with the Steelers team.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going with the 1979 team. Tied for the NFL's best record, 12-4.
Wow.
Number 1 overall offense, number 2 overall defense. Offense led the NFL in points.
Jeez.
Defense was top 5 in all the major categories: points, yards, sacks. They allowed quarterbacks only a 47% completion percentage, 56 rating. They had 9 Hall of Fame players
Wow.
on that squad,
Wow.
plus
Wow.
1 Hall of Fame coach, the late Chuck Noll.
Oh, yes.
And that is the team that closed the loop on that 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. 1979 Pittsburgh Steelers.
Total
That's
domination.
great. That's a great
Pedro.
pick. Oh, yes, the 1985 Chicago Bears.
The Bears!
What
Yes.
can you say about them? I mean, they had great offense, great defense, 15-1. McMahon, Peyton, Richard Dent, Singletary, of course, the refrigerator.
Oh,
Who robbed Walter Payton of a touchdown
Yes,
in the
I
Super
know.
Bowl?
I remember
did.
that. I remember.
I'm still mad at
I
Ditka
know.
for letting him carry instead
I
of
would've
Walter
loved
He
Payton.
got a
Jets
penalty
rolled
for
under.
that.
I would love to see Buddy Ryan with the best defense he's ever had a chance
And
at.
then,
yeah.
of course, Mike Ditka as coach.
Oh, Ditka was
Yeah.
a phenomenal coach with the Bears.
he's a great-
Why
he's
did
a
they
great-
not win more, Jay? That
You know
Bears
what?
team.
For some reason, they actually could not manage to keep that team together.
It's like the '86 Mets. It was everything
Yes.
came together in
It's
one
one
year,
of those
even though it had
very
so
quickly.
much more potential. Both of
You know,
those teams.
every
They
now
broke
and
that up
then
too
you have
quickly.
one
One
of
of
those.
those dream teams.
Yes, you have
Yes.
one of those magical seasons where just the stars are aligned properly,
Everything
and
worked.
it just never happens that way
Like that
again.
'85 Bears team were better than all those Cowboy teams that won like 4 Super Bowls, all the
Probably.
49er teams that won about 4 Super Bowls, but they just had 1 year to
Yeah,
shine.
and
They
sometimes
had
that's
that
the way
one
it goes. Some teams get dynasties, like the Cowboys, like the Niners, like the Steelers. Some
Steelers.
teams just get 1 year in the sun, and
And
that's
that's
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
So-
It's like, it's a magical year. 85 Chicago Bears, like your Steelers,
Best defense, one of the best
defense.
defenses
Oh, yeah.
I have
That
ever
defense,
seen.
the monsters of the Midway.
You
was
guys
the
know
perfect
where
name for
the
them.
you guys know where the 46 defense actually how it got its name?
No.
I do, but I forgot, so you tell me.
Gary Fensick was the key
yeah.
playmaker in that defense. His jersey number was 46, and that's how
right.
Buddy Ryan came up
That's
with
right.
that
I do
name.
remember his number.
That music means it's time for the 3-minute warning. Sean, lead off.
Wow. The World Cup is over. I can't believe it. Now I could actually get back to work, concentrate on keeping up with my family, and just getting back to general life. You have no idea. When the World Cup happens, everything absolutely stops. I almost take off and just watch 3 games in the group rounds, 4 games in the last game of the group round, then every knockout game. It's really a dedication. So after the World Cup, I'm in kind of just a general malaise. How can I get excited about these rudimentary sports that we've been talking about for a half hour? The special thing about the World Cup is that it's the world's best athletes, not complaining about money, but putting on their country's jersey. I mean, the worst guy on the team likely gets paid as much as the best guy on that particular team, and nobody shies away from being in that competition.
Yep.
That's why the World Cup stands alone, and FIFA, even though they accuse you of a lot of corruption, they put on a damn good show.
Riley's reign of terror. When Tim Duncan said, "We will win, this won't happen to us again," he made every Spurs fan and Miami Heat hater ecstatic that the two-time champ could be dethroned. The decision that united King James with Bosh and Wade made the Heat the envy of many and yet so hated by others. We wondered how this greasy-haired, smarmy villain with his Armani suits dripping in arrogance and Mike Douglas wannabe looks pulled off that nightmare. Reigning supreme in the NBA for 2 years. I'm talking about Pat the Rat Riley. Riley swore he had the master plan to bring LeBron back, but for once this conniving slickster failed to close the deal. King James had spoken and the prodigal son returned to Cleveland. While he retained Wade and Bosh, the crown has been removed. Now the best player in the game is no longer with him, and so go Miami's chances of another championship run, burning in the black soot and charred embers. Now another one bites the dust. I say, hallelujah!
A lot of vitriol has been leveled at Tony Dungy by both the regular and social media in the wake of his comments in a Tampa Tribune article in which he stated that he would not have drafted Michael Sam. Now, Dungy has since released a statement clarifying a few things in order to provide context for his comments, but he has never claimed he's been misquoted. Something else he's never claimed, that Michael Sam did not deserve or have the right to play in the NFL. Now, I've got a point to make here, but before I do, I just need to say this to everyone who's been playing the Jackie Robinson card. Stop it! Back then, Major League Baseball said that African Americans not only didn't deserve to play with white Americans, but didn't have the right to. That's not the case here. Dungy's comments were never about anyone's right to do anything. What they are is consistent with his views on such things, whether they're based on his Christian beliefs or his football philosophy. Wanting to be a mentor to Michael Vick dovetails with his Christian beliefs, helping redeem or save someone who could be viewed as a lost soul. Having an issue with Johnny Manziel's off-the-field antics dovetails with his football philosophy. He's never been crazy about players who bring that type of media coverage to his team. And right or wrong, a lot of NFL people share his opinion on both Sam and Manziel for that exact same reason. Now, you might be disheartened, you might be enraged, you might even be in agreement with Tony Dungy on this. But what you really shouldn't be is surprised.
We usually don't talk about politics on the show, but now that the World Cup is over, let's talk about the price Brazil paid for having this lavish affair while many of its citizens live in dire poverty. The country reportedly spent at least $11 billion upgrading its stadiums and infrastructure for the World Cup, only for those stadiums, hotels, etc. to just sit there after the tournament ended. Fans soundly booed Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff and FIFA President Sepp Blatter when they presented the World Cup trophy to arch-rival Germany after it beat Argentina 1-0. Don't forget the embarrassment of the host country, a country that worships this sport, being destroyed in the semifinals and being shut out in the third place match.
Yes, sir.
And they're going to spend billions more again for the Olympics 2 years later. When will these cities and countries ever learn about spending and hosting these huge-scale events only to see the lavishness just go to waste when it's all over?
Amen.
For Jay Kaplan, Steve Ferguson, and Sean Roman, I'm Pedro Hazel Jr. Thanks for spending part of your evening with us. We'll see you on August 21st for another edition of On the Sports Lines. Remember, if you want to see this show again or catch up on any of the ones you might have missed, check us out at youtube.com/onthesportslines and check out the latest blog piece at onthesportslines.blogspot.com. Good night, everybody.
Night,
Good night,
everybody.
everyone.